Part of the audience. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, are you all right? Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Joint Consultative and Safety Committee meeting. I'll start by asking for apologies and substitutes for absence. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Hemingway, and I've just had apologies from Councillor Roxanne Ellis. Unfortunately, there were no substitutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before I carry on, I'd just like to welcome Councillor Duncan to his first JCSE committee meeting. Welcome, Andrew. Okay, let's move on, is to approve a correct record of the minutes held in the meeting in November. Would somebody like to move these minutes? Second them. Okay. Is there any changes, any errors anybody sees? No. Okay. Agenda item number 4. Oh no, wait, sorry, number 3. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Item 4, current staffing issues. Report by the Head of Performance and Service Planning.
Thank you, Chair. So just a brief update, really, for the pay award. It's not the pay award for 2022-23. It's actually last year still. We're still working to try to resolve that issue from 21-22. There's been some updates since the papers were written. So for the JNC, for Chief Executives and Chief Officers, there has been an agreement now, a resolution for pay. The pay award will be applied for 1.5%. In terms of NJC, which is the body that employs or represents most of our staff, we still haven't arrived at an agreement for last year. Current update seems to be that Unison have balloted to ask about strike action, and that's not been supported. The turnout was very low, and in law, the result would not would not deem any strike action to be legal. GMB are still, as I understand it, deciding whether to ballot fully for strike action or not. So that's still up in the air. I think Unite also we're waiting for results. So I think as a summary, what I'd say is that the dispute still remains. It may be because of perhaps the result of the Unison ballot. The position may be slightly weakened. It's hard to say, isn't it? But at the moment, nothing to report in terms of a formal and firm pay settlement for the year. There's a question at the back as well. Yep.
Provided by the 28th of February.
For GMB.
If everybody heard that.
for the whole.
Yes. Yes.
Agreement. Okay, so that may tell us that GMB perhaps aren't moving forward, but I can't tell that. But thank you. That's useful.
Thank you.
Probably happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Yep. Any questions on this agenda item? Okay. The recommendation is just to note the report. So thank you, David. Agenda item number 5, and we're in for a bit of a treat because David's going to do a demonstration for us as well, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, treat. I'm not sure it's a treat, but let's give it a whirl. I just thought I might try and bring to life some of the results from the recent staff survey. So I guess just a very short preamble. So we do this thing every 2 years. It's a biennial survey. This year, in terms of response rates, we were really pleased. The response rate runs about 42%, which is slightly higher than last time and much higher than 4 years ago. 186 people responded to the survey, so it's a good result in that way, and I'll cover some more of that in a moment. If I may stand, Chair. Yeah. Okay. Ran over the period of a month from the end of September to end of October. So I was going to have a quick canter through. So everything that I'm going to say is in the papers in front of you, but I just thought maybe just try and bring it to life a little bit and just highlight some of the things that I think perhaps more important. So I guess the starting point is one of the performance measurements that we have is staff satisfaction. It's a thing we ask each year or each 2 years in the same way. So you'll remember the last 18 months the same as I do. It's been a fairly tumultuous time. Still 72% of people saying that we feel happy working for the council, down slightly from 2 years ago. I think still a positive result. It's the target at 74%, so we're just slightly shy of that. 74 is not a magic number, it's just something we set a long time ago. So in terms of, I suppose, general feelings of satisfaction, the staff are telling us that there is a reasonable degree of satisfaction. So the table there tells us about response rates, and yes, there are some teams where response rate as a percentage is low. I suppose, well, 0% is quite low, isn't it? So economic growth and regen, you remember at the time that the survey was being conducted, a lot of people were beginning to leave the team, and it's a smallish team anyway, so I wouldn't read too much into that. I suppose highlight figures for me, looking at parks and street care, 52%, transport and weight services, 43%. So the last time we did the survey, we had 2 or 3 people responding to us. So how did we increase that number? Because we've tried to learn from survey to survey. How do we get a better response from the people working for us at the depot? The simple answer was we got out of bed really early and went down there at 6 in the morning. So Alan Green and myself, and actually talked to people and encouraged them to fill in the survey, explain why we're doing the survey, what's it about, and what happens with the results as well. So I think getting out of bed kind of did work. So a lesson for us all, and in 2 years' time, I guess, if we're all still here, we'll be getting out of bed early again, because it does work. So what I'd say, the good thing is for the survey, it's a real mix of different sorts of employees. So it's people that work in the offices, people that work outside.
David, can I just ask, do you want to take questions as you go, or would you like to wait till the end?
Can we probably take questions at the end? Is that okay?
Yeah,
I'll canter through. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. So I'm going to come on to some of the things in a moment where perhaps the responses are disappointing or probably point us to the need to do something. Before I did that, I thought it would be really nice just to perhaps focus on some of the things that are good as well, because there's a real danger sometimes of just leaping to the back. Some really good responses. I think almost all the responses are down from 2 years ago, and that's a fact. Why is that? Well, a lot of things have happened, I guess. But still, some of these results are really good and really encouraging. So I'm enthusiastic about my job. 78% of people said that. I've clear objectives and standards, 87%. I'm trusted to get on with my job, 92% of people. And again, this says a lot about the job and the people, but also the managers as well. This is the good stuff. I'm able to make suggestions to improve the work I do. I feel happy working for the council, 72%, we've talked about that. I can manage my workload most of the time, 73%. I feel my working environment is healthy and safe, 75%. Again, when you think about what's happened over the last couple of years, it's a good result. The feeling valued section of the survey, again, some great results there. The support you receive from colleagues, 80%. The teamwork, the feeling of a team. The freedom to use your own initiative, 82%. Kind of an important one for me. So when you look at reasons for stress in work, quite often it's people that do either very repetitive work or work where they can't determine how to do things, not using an initiative. So that's a good result for me. So all the ones that are missing out, the low numbers, I'm going to come on to those, don't worry. But this is the good stuff. Your manager. So again, praises me when I do a good job, 66%. Is generally supportive of me, 70%. So there were some dips in this one, but there's some good things still. And again, I don't want to lose sight of the good things. think over the last 2 years, again, having a manager that's supportive has been kind of key in a lot of teams where people have worked remotely and at distance without actually physically seeing other people in the team. So your organisation, I'm proud to work for Gedling Borough Council, 70%. It's a dip from the 83 that it was, it is. Still good. I make a positive difference to people's lives through the work I do, 83%. So again, still lots of good stuff in there. So, on to the areas where I think there's probably less satisfaction. Again, I can read through some of these, but you can read them for yourselves. So these are the areas where we need to do something about it. And I'll come on to this in a second in some more detail, but what's the point of doing this if we don't do something about it? So there's a whole list there. I won't read through all of them, but being well informed about what happens in the council, tackles underperformance in the team. Yeah. So that's something that really is important to people. They talk about that. You know, if a manager doesn't tackle performance within the team, it's actually demotivating for the other people in the team. It doesn't just cost because the person isn't performing well. It costs in the team because actually it's quite a toxic environment. Regular team meetings, okay, that's dipped a lot. Interesting one because arguably you'd say an environment where we're working remotely, having team meeting, actually it's a lot easier to do, physically dragging people in. Or, on the other hand, you might say, well, actually it's been a really chaotic time and having team meetings regularly is difficult, isn't it? I'm not sure what happened with that one. But having something simple like a regular team meeting is important. Think about other things, about communication, other issues where it's not, things haven't gone as well. Communication is key to what happens in the place, people tell us that. So the team meeting bit is important. Training is in there as well. Planning and decision making, longer term stuff to do with the direction of the team and jobs. Quite a big drop in terms of people's perception about how we're performing. From 74% a couple of years ago to 59 now. Recognition and appreciation. Often just a simple thank you, isn't it? But again, working remotely, does that make it more difficult? Question. Whatever it is, it's dropped slightly. And feedback on my performance, that's dropped as well. So for me, quite an interesting one. If we're telling people we're not doing well, or you are doing well, they need to know that. We can't just not let people know about their work performance. Again, only as a link you'll see that. But having people working in a vacuum when there's no feedback is really unhelpful. And this idea of that, I suppose, an overall understanding of what the council is trying to achieve. Again, the last 2 years, I think, we've tried to achieve all sorts of different things very quickly because of what's happened. But it is an issue as well. So some of the survey as well, for the first time, we looked at states of mental and physical health as well, again, with a view to what has happened that's different over the last 18 months, 2 years. I think probably between mental and physical health, you'll see sort of similarities in response rates, I suppose, or what people feel. That's probably about 10% of people feel that mental and physical health is poor. The remainder predominantly think it's okay or good. So it is that sort of 10% that we need to think about. Has mental health improved or worsened over a length of time? 34% of people told us that actually the mental health had worsened. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. What do we do about that? Well, we have put in place a bespoke mental health awareness program. That's been made available to people, with access to a PC. Across the whole workforce, for that office-based people and people not in offices, we've promoted the employee assistance program again. So that's the thing where people 24/7 can be in touch with counselling service and services where coaching and counselling are offered. That's over the telephone, or if people prefer, arrangements can be made for face-to-face as well. So the support is there that's provided by experts objectively. That's open to everyone. We have in April now, we've commissioned some mental health training for managers and team members. So that's happening for probably about 30 people who have expressed an interest in April. So we try and do things with that. In the staff survey itself, and since we've tried to promote access to the council's gyms as well, you'll be aware that members of staff get a generous discount. It's about 50% to be a member of the DNA brand for the council. So in terms of physical health, which also may lead to perhaps better mental health as well, we do try to promote what we have to employees. And probably really a question for office-based employees who have changed working practices over the last 18 months and 2 years. Again, this is not the approach of like dripping this out over months and years where people gradually change. These things are overnight changes. We're not unique in that, but it is remarkable to think of what we have achieved. So actually working differently, so partly from home or entirely from home, what do people think about that? So efficiency, well, 2% of people thought it actually worsened. Okay. Probably, so we have 78% who tell us it's about the same. The majority, in terms of proportion, tell us it's improved. People feel more efficient working in those ways. Work-life balance has improved dramatically. Nearly 60% of people, nearly 2/3 of people tell us it's improved. Feelings about work, again, 75% of people tell us it's either the same or better. So lots of bad things have happened over the last 18 months, but actually changing working practices have had predominantly a positive effect on a lot of people. Not everyone, but a lot of people. So before I get to the questions bit, what I was going to say is that, it's referring back to what I said a few minutes ago. What's the point of doing that if you don't do something with it? So what do we do with that? So the results have gone to SLT. The results have gone to SLT with recommendations for action. That's included in your papers. You'll see what's there. Some of the actions are corporate actions, so things like improving communication. So you know what, over the last couple of years, we've done some really incredible things. If people think the council isn't performing well, I would contend it's not because it's not performing well. It's perhaps because we don't tell people enough about what we're doing, people that work here. So actually, some of the actions about improving communications to staff across the council, if they work in a community centre, a leisure centre, in the planning team down here, wherever they are, let's tell people better about what we're doing, because they need to know. Some of the actions are actually designed to address team performance or service performance. So in the results that come back, they are broken down quite specifically into service areas and teams as well. Where we think there are gaps, SLT are aware of that, and we've put in place those action measures designed specifically for those teams, and we have put the expected outcomes within Pentana as well. So SLT can monitor what's supposed to be happening to improve as well. So we've taken the bad stuff in the survey, we're doing something about it, and that's the purpose of doing this every 2 years. It's also important we feedback and tell people about this as well. So we've not only covered that in the formats you expect, so we've included it in the intranet and the iGen. We've also done posters. We've also actually stuck the results to pay slips down the depot as well, so people know that what they've said, something happens because of it. So I guess there will still be some people who think, well, nothing happens, nothing ever happens, but actually we've tried hard to get over that message that things do happen when you take part in this sort of survey. So that's kind of it, I guess. I'm really happy to take questions. And
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for that comprehensive run through there. Some really interesting results. Before I ask the question that I've initially stuck my hand up for, I just noticed what I think was a bit of an anomaly on that last slide about efficiencies and work-life balance. which I'd just like to ask you about. Yeah, so you've got one column which says same, and then a column at the end says not changed. I'm just wondering what's the difference between the two. Sorry for catching you out there, David. Right. Okay, got you. Yeah. Yeah. Got you. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't quite work it. Okay. Yeah. What I initially stuck my hand up for was on response rates. I guess in some ways, perhaps the fact that less than half of the members of staff have taken the time to complete the survey, which doesn't look overly onerous. That does feel a little bit disappointing, although perhaps you could put a positive spin on it, because people do tend to shout up when they've got a strong opinion one way or the other, and if so many people aren't, perhaps they're reasonably content. I don't know. I take your point about the economic growth and regeneration team being a small team. Okay, that's fair enough. But actually looking at it, it does look as though that the overall response rates have been dragged down a little bit by some of the larger teams. Leisure services, for example, 25% out of over 100. Property, 9% out of over 20. Customer services was fairly 31% out of nearly 30, and that sort of seems to have dragged the overall thing down. I wonder if you've sort of considered incentivising completion. For example, everybody who completes it goes into a prize draw. Something just try and just put those rates up a little bit. So that it is more reflective of the whole workforce, not just not just less than half of it.
No, it's a good point. Thank you. In some way, yeah. So going back to what I said about let's learn from things as well. So we learned about probably the depot from 2 years ago, which was that's terrible as a response. We need to do much better. But you're right. So actually, it does now point us to perhaps some of the office-based teams who, in the past, actually, I think have probably responded more positively in terms of proportion. I think for me, again, I think different people have different views about incentivisation. I'd like to think maybe what we can do is perhaps get some more engagement with those teams. And for me, the incentive, I'd like to think, would be that we do something with this, and maybe try and get that point over a little bit more and work with managers more closely. We do the email reminders, we do the publicity through the iGen stuff, but maybe that just feels too remote sometimes, and maybe just getting some of the managers on board to really get across the message that things do happen because of it. So for me, I'd like to think that maybe that's more of an incentive. But I mean, there are different views, I accept. No, I haven't thought about prize draw. Maybe we could look at that as well. But I think this whole message for me was about doing more with engagement. It clearly works for some teams if you put the effort in. I think maybe we just need to put even more effort in to some of the office-based people who perhaps have become more jaded as well. I don't know.
Councillor Feeney.
Yeah, thank you. I just think you want to be congratulated for getting 50%. It's incredible. I've done them in the private sector, and if you got 20%, you have to celebrate. But the main question I was going to ask is really with employees. Have we got any problems with retention of certain skills within the council? That the private sector's offering higher rates of pay. Are we actually losing anything to the private sector? And I was especially thinking those people with heavy goods vehicle licenses, are we given any incentive, financially or otherwise, to actually maintain this stuff? Because if we train them up then we're losing them, we could actually, in the long term, lose out. So how's our retention and even recruiting aspects to get people from the private sector? Because, I mean, the local government, most people tend to come from one local government council to another, but really, if we just do that, gradually we're going to lose a lot of staff to the private sector.
Sure. No, thank you. So picking out the question about drivers, to start with, HGV drivers. So we do currently run an incentive scheme, and that's encouraging people to stay for sort of 6 months blocks over a year. So payments are made to those people for at September, and then there'll be made another payment of £500 in April. And to retain that payment, they need to stay with us for 6 months after each of those payment dates. So that'll see us through to September next year. I think what I would say is that, honestly, there's little evidence of drivers moving away from us. And absolutely, you can earn more driving an LGV up and down a motorway. You'll drive it for a lot of hours a week at really difficult times. And when you finish at age 67, you won't have a pension that's anywhere near what we have. And so there are a lot of people that work for us that see the bigger picture. And it's not about the cash in hand at that time. It's about the bigger package. So I think that helps local government and helps us more generally because the conditions of the service are much better. You know, you go home at 4 o'clock, you have decent holidays, you get a pension. It is the whole package, and a lot of people see that. I think in terms of retention, generally, we are a pretty stable place. I think that when we have had vacancies recently, at some of the middle management and the senior levels, we have struggled in professional areas, in finance, classically over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, things like planning, sometimes environmental health. These are all areas where we struggle in local government, in the public sector. But in finance, it's been quite difficult to get sort of, the right people in place because of what you say. Money, quite often. It also feels like it's not perhaps the workplace that it was. I don't mean Gedling, I mean it's perhaps local government. And to an extent, it feels as though there aren't the same number of people, wanting or willing to move around the country to get different jobs. It feels that people are more stable in, geographically quite often. So I'd say retention isn't necessarily the issue, but when we do have vacancies in some areas, it's at the middle and higher levels, that can be an issue. It can be.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was quite encouraged by the working from home figures. It did look like most people liked working from home and seemed very positive. And it seems like I don't know, they felt it was good for efficiency. I don't know if we can verify that it is. But it also seems to be good for mental health, good for work-life balance. I just wonder if we are planning on going forward with some sort of a hybrid model where people can work from home if and when they wish to.
Sure, thank you. So I don't think we have information or data across the board. What I would say is that we do have some data in some of the areas, and in customer services, for example, the call answering rate was higher and better when people work remotely. So it is, the council offers a wide range of services, and I can't tell you in all the areas. From an employer perspective, we can confirm that. I suppose my feeling is that in my team, we probably are more efficient because whichever way you cut it, you do have the conversations by the kettle. You do have this. You do rock up to a meeting 5 minutes early. You probably stay 10 minutes afterwards to talk to people around you, which is the human part of the job. And in some ways, it's sad to lose that. It is, and you do gain from that in terms of perhaps swapping ideas, and it's quite a healthy environment. But in terms of just focusing, on the job, time is used more efficiently. So the second half of your question was about... Yes. So again, Mike might be able to sort of help us a little bit as well. But I think the simple answer is yes. And we've actually made it clear, within the workplaces that managers determine their own, business need. But absolutely, we will support the idea of that hybrid working. Environmentally, it makes sense. You say we've seen the stats. In terms of mental health, it helps people. in terms of work-life balance, and probably, and as a manager, I'd say yes, it does help efficiency and output as well. So that's, the way we're heading, I think, Mike, isn't it?
Mike?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, absolutely right, what David said. So quite keen to carry on with the agile working approach. We have rolled laptops out where we can. I think we've just rolled out 116 now since, well, probably over the last 9 months, which is, really fast paced for us. Bearing in mind we've got supply issues, so it takes 6 months for a laptop to come to this country. Then we have to program them. We've got one chap in IT doing all that work, so we've had to get an agency person to assist him to reformat all those, then roll them out, etc. So it's took a lot of preparation. So short answer, yes, we do want to carry on with the agile approach. I've left it to each head of service to determine, what is the best fit for their team. My guideline is 40% in the office, but I've left it to each head of service to determine parameters around that. A lot of councils have gone 50% in the office, so I think 2 days out of 5 is probably about right. But again, I think it's down to interpretation. There is a concern from me, and I know a lot of people around the building probably work more hours free of charge effectively at home. I do 12 hours and I'm at home. When I'm in the office, I do 8, so with 4 hours travelling either side, so I think we have to be careful of what we ask employees to do. But, efficiency-wise, far more efficient, I think, but there's that isolation factor that we need to take account of, and people working more than the 37 hours, which is a concern, So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other questions from the unions? Councillor Greensmith? No. I think the only other question I would want to ask is, I think Councillor Wilkinson covered it, about these figures. Due to the current pandemic, do you estimate that these numbers, the response rates, will improve next time round?
They've improved over the last 2 occasions we've run the survey. So I suppose what I'd say is, I guess what I was saying to Councillor Wilkinson, that we in my team need to learn from some of this where the response rates have been lower. I think just engage more with the managers of those teams and the bigger teams to perhaps get to the bottom of, not why they haven't responded, but what would be helpful to get them to respond. So it could be incentivising in some way, or it could be, well, you know what, actually maybe just popping down for a quarter of an hour to the teams to talk about why on earth we do it and what we do with it all might be helpful to encourage people. So my hope would be that we could improve the response rate even further. I guess time will tell. So what I'm saying is, yes, I want to learn a lesson. We've learned lessons over the last, crikey, however many occasions we've run the survey for. We can do better than this, I'm sure. And that's what my ambition would be, yes.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, the recommendation for this report is on page 9, and it is just to note the report, so duly noted. Thank you, David. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, and that's you again, David.
Thank you, Chair. Just to report briefly the changes in establishment outside the JCSC forum. Just one minor change within the communications team, deletion of a Band 6 communications officer post, establishment of a new communications and web officer post, and it was a redeployment for that post holder, so not contentious and fairly straightforward.
Thank you very much. Any questions on agenda item number 6? Nope. Okay, the recommendation is to note the report. It's duly noted.
Thank you, Chair. So just, again, a brief summary of where we are with Cygnus at the moment. I think probably up until the quarter of last year, sort of September time, things seem to have been improving, and the target was within sight, and in spite of what was happening with COVID at that time, things were looking fairly rosy from a sickness absence perspective. Less rosy now, I'm afraid. So we've had obviously the the Omicron variant that came along, which is, in terms of numbers of people being affected by COVID, has really created this third wave, if you like, this third spike. And although for many people the symptoms are less severe in terms of numbers of people affected, it's been much more severe, really. I suppose my summary is that currently we're running at sort of 10% above target, or below target, I beg your pardon, in terms of the target number of days is 9. We're hovering around 10 when this report was written. It's actually higher than that now. It's probably about 10.5 days, 10.4 days. So what's happened over the last 3, 4, 5 months really has had an effect on attendance. I think the reality now is we won't achieve target for the year. I think that's fairly clear. Things aren't going to change that rapidly in the next few months. I suppose with the announcement yesterday by the government about how we're going to treat COVID-19 going forwards, and the removal of almost all requirements to test and to isolate, it will be interesting. I suppose that in theory should have a positive effect on attendance, but again, clearly there are different views about perhaps the government's measures there. Can't predict going forwards particularly, other than to say to you, I think that we will not meet target for this year. I think that we'll perhaps be closer to 10 days in the end rather than 9 days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Any questions on agenda item number 7? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's not a question as such, it's an observation on that point that you just made, David, about the removal of the requirement to test and self-isolate. I think that is very concerning, because I think what you're going to find, whilst I think if people are symptomatic, or certainly within a local authority where they do get full sick pay, I think people will stay off work. But the problem is if there are people asymptomatic coming into the office and then spreading it to others, not having realised that they're infectious because they weren't testing anymore, because when the government removes its free lateral flow testing that so many people have relied on to keep an eye on things, I think that is concerning. And I do worry that not just this authority but across the piece there will be a spike in absences, and through no fault of the workforce.
Thank you very much. Any more questions on agenda item number 7? No? Okay. The recommendation is on page 25, and it's just to note the report. The report is noted. Okay. Agenda item number 8, I've not got anything. Agenda item number 9 is the exclusion of press and public. Have we got a seconder? All in favour, just so we can get it recorded. Thank you very much. Okay.